Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
You've probably heard the old story about a couple who got married, and the new husband asked his wife, "Why do you cut off the end of the ham before you bake it?" She didn't know. Her mother had always just done that. So she asked her mother, and she didn't know either. But when she asked her mother, she replied, "Because my pot was too small." When my daughter was a newlywed, she asked cooking advice quite frequently. And she made sure to ask, "Is there a reason for this, or is it just how Grandma did it?" Now, Jesus always had a reason for whatever He said and did. We can see that in John 11 as He's about to raise Lazarus from the dead. First, He commands that the stone be taken away from the door. He could have done it Himself as part of the miracle, but He always liked to involve other people in His miracles. Likely the same people who moved the stone into place were the ones that took it off. Then He prayed. Again, He could have just done the miracle, but He stopped and pointed to God the Father, thanking Him for what He was about to do and connecting His power to God's. He said, "Father, I thank You that You have heard me, and I know that You always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that You sent me." He basically announced that this great miracle He was about to perform had God's full approval, and it was for those who had been mourning to know without a doubt that Jesus truly was the Son of God. He also could have prayed as an example for us. We shouldn't be trying to do things on our own, and through prayer, we can thank God for how He's going to use us. Then it says, He cried with a loud voice. In Greek, it's a very loud, piercing cry. This not only showed His authority, but got people's attention. In this loud voice, He cried, "Lazarus, come forth." In one commentary, I read that Jesus had to specify Lazarus because if He just commanded, "Come forth," in the middle of a cemetery, all the believers buried there would have thought that it was Resurrection Day and walked out of their graves too. Imagine the power in His words. Just like the power of God's words, "Let there be," created the world and everything in it. Jesus' words gave life to Lazarus' body and proved not only that Jesus is the Son of God, but that He has power over death, the thing everyone fears the most. Suddenly, death wasn't the final word. And if Jesus had power over death, what other paradigms in our heads need to be shifted? Lazarus shuffled out of the grave, still bound in his grave clothes. Jesus commanded, "Loose him and let him go." Probably the same people who had sadly put on the grave clothes joyfully took them off. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead, but he'd have to face death again. Tradition says 30 years later. Do you think Lazarus feared that second death? Of course not. He probably even looked forward to it because he knew what was on the other side. We can read this story of Lazarus' resurrection, rejoice with the little family, and totally miss the point. When Jesus does a miracle, it always had a spiritual counterpart. For example, when Jesus gave sight to the blind man, He showed how everyone is blinded by sin, and it's only through God's grace that we can see the truth and come out of darkness into His light. So what spiritual truth did Jesus teach here? Lazarus' death and resurrection didn't just foreshadow Jesus' upcoming death and resurrection. It foreshadowed what He could and would do for our spirits. Paul explained this in a few places. In Ephesians, he says, "But God, who is rich in mercy, because of His great love for us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ and raised us up." In Romans 6, he says, "For if we have been united together in the likeness of His death, certainly we also shall be in the likeness of His resurrection." So we are dead spiritually, until He makes us alive. Doesn't this miracle with Lazarus make such a beautiful 3D picture of God calling us out of sin, darkness, ignorance, and death, loosing us from the sin that held us in its grasp? And it's all because of His great love for us. Have you been called out and loosed from the sin that has bound you? If not, pray and ask God to do that for you. If so, praise Him for what He called you out of and how different your life is today.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.